Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to do a central bearded dragon care video. Whether you're getting a baby or an adult or you're a first time bearded dragon owner, hopefully we should be able to cover everything. Now we are an Australian business, so we are going to be doing a lot of things from an Australian perspective, which is really cool because there's not too many videos out there, you know, that are Aussie. Now the topics we are going to cover today are things like enclosure setup, lighting, heating, humidity, diet, water, interesting facts. So hopefully in this video you should have all of your questions answered. Gimli is going to be helping me out, of course. She's our famous little superstar of our business. So let's get started. You finished? So setting up your enclosure. How do you go about setting up a bearded dragon enclosure? It is really built around a hot and a cool side. So say this setup is an enclosure. We're going to split it down the middle. This is the hot side, this is the cool side. The hot side is where you want to have your heat lamp and your UVB light. And the cool side is where your bearded dragon can go to escape that. Also on the hot side, you probably want something that your bearded dragon can climb so it can get higher up to get more heat, or climb down to get a bit cooler. So very good. You can use sticks, make a climbing platform, buy one, totally up to you. Now when it comes to heating, there's a variety of different heating sources you can use. So you can use the traditional dome heating lights, have that set up on one half of the enclosure. You can use sometimes the inbuilt ones where you can actually attach the heating inside the enclosure and have the cage around it. There's so many different things you can use. Now with the temperatures of your hot and your cool side, this differs from babies to adults. Now I'm referring to babies as about 9 to 12 months and under, and adults above that. So when it comes to babies, they're born in the hottest part of the year in Central Australia. Temperatures can get about 50 degrees. These guys are named sun worshippers for a reason. So generally when it comes to heating up my bearded dragon enclosures, my hot side, the hottest point of the enclosure, so the top of your basking platform closest to your heat bulb, I have mine set at around 43 to 47 degrees. Whereas your adults, it can be a bit cooler, and you can have your adults set at about 37 to 43 degrees. Now the cool side for both adults and babies, you want it to be around 26 to 32 degrees. For babies, I obviously have mine set a little bit higher. I have mine around 30 to 32 degrees. When it comes to development of bearded dragons, heat does play a key part. It helps with growth, development, metabolism. Crucial to get that heating right. Generally, if you don't get your heating right, your bearded dragon may not feed properly. You can tell Gimli's got no issues with food. So that's a bit of a sign. If your bearded dragon isn't eating, it could be related to the heating. Now, how can you accurately tell the temperature of your hot and your cool side, and maybe certain spots like your basking spot, the top point, the hottest part? The best way is to use a temperature gun. Now, not all pet shops will sell this. Generally, you have to go searching online, but it is the best method to tell and accurately tell the temperature of certain spots in your enclosure. It literally looks like a gun. You press a button, the laser will point out at a specific spot and it can tell the temperature. This is also great for aquariums if you've got turtles, baby crocs. I used it a lot when I did a lot of baby crocodile breeding and helped out with that. So definitely the most accurate way. But you can get sort of digital, I guess, little temperature gauges you can put around your enclosure, and it can tell you, not as accurate, but it can do the job. But babies, they can be quite sensitive. So if your baby, you know, isn't doing so well, you may want to invest in one of those temperature guns. Now next is the UVB lighting. Now first of all, why do you need UVB lights in your enclosure? Now pretty much the UVB mimics the sun. Again, these guys are sun worshippers. They absolutely love it. You want them to get about 8 to 12 hours of UVB a day. It is vital for the synthesis of vitamin D3. Now D3 is essential for calcium absorption from their diet. So if they do not get the correct UVB lighting, so if they don't get enough or they don't have it for the hours that they need daily, this can lead to metabolic bone disease, all kinds of horrible malformations which you do not want. So very, very important to have UVB lighting. Now, when do you change your UVB bulbs? How often? It really depends on the brand, the quality, the type you're using. Most bulbs you need to change every 6 to 9 months. You can get zoo grade ones which you only have to change once a year. Again, they're a little bit more pricey, but if you forget, or if you just want, a one-off thing a year, generally a pretty good option to go for. But most pet shops will sell you UVB bulbs that need to be changed every 6 to 9 months. Generally change them every 6 months just to be on the safe side. Now, diet and water. What do these guys need to eat and drink to survive? So we're going to start off with water because that's pretty basic. When it comes to bearded dragons in the wild, they generally get most of their water from the food that they eat. So that's from insects, they eat a few succulents out in the wild, vegetation. So they can get most of their water from their diet. Also through the air that they breathe. But if they are going to drink water in the wild, they generally only drink running water. So say from streams, or if it's rained, the water will sort of come down their face and they can actually drink it off their face. Now, if you want to increase your water intake of your bearded dragon, if it's a baby, you can get a spray bottle, spray it down and it'll drink the water off its face. Gimli, absolute pain when it comes to drinking water. I make sure she's got vegetables that are packed with water, so cucumber's really good, also watermelon. So there's a few ways to increase the water. You can also give them a bath. They can absorb water through their skin. Obviously, thanks Gimli. Obviously don't put soap or anything in that, just lukewarm water will do just fine. And they can absorb that water through their private parts too. So a few ways of them getting their water. Now when it comes to diet of bearded dragon, babies and adults' diet is quite different. So when it comes to babies, 9 to 12 months and under, they generally need about 80% bugs. And with bugs, I'm talking about dubia roaches, crickets, mealworms. Generally, a lot of breeders in Australia feed their babies crickets. They're easy, they're cheap, they don't climb out of the enclosure. They're just a bit easier to handle. So I find if you've got a picky eater and they won't touch the dubia roaches, it's probably because they've been brought up on crickets. So generally your roaches are slightly more nutritious, then it goes crickets, then it goes mealworms. Mealworms can be high in fat. There is a bit of a sort of myth, I'd say, that bearded dragons can't digest that hard exoskeleton of mealworms. I find my bearded dragon digests it just fine. But every bearded dragon is different. Their digestive systems can differ depending on their genetic breeding quality, if there's been a lot of inbreeding, if they've got any health complications. So if you see in their poo, if there's chunks of mealworms and it's just not agreeing with it, then yeah, don't feed them mealworms. But if you've got a fairly healthy standard bearded dragon, and Gimli's a wild type, she's very robust, feeding mealworms, I've had no issues. Now when it comes to feeding the bugs to your baby bearded dragons, always place the bugs on a bed of vegetables, because if they accidentally miss the bug and eat a vegetable, it's a nice introduction for them to know what vegetables are, because when they get to an adult, that actually swaps their diet. So it'll be 80% vegetables, 20% bugs. And you can put fruit as a treat in both of them, but yeah, huge swap when they become an adult. And Gimli loves her bugs. She wasn't a fan when she had the big swap, but it takes time to adjust, but they eventually will adjust. Now, what vegetables can you feed your bearded dragon? Now, again, I'm doing this from an Australian perspective because I've seen a lot of American videos. They will list off things that we cannot get here. So the main vegetables that I tend to stick to is bok choys, and there's a variety of different choys you can feed them. That's generally a big favorite. Zucchini, cucumber, cauliflower, broccoli, broccolini. Pumpkin is a really good one. Gimli absolutely loves a pumpkin. As you can tell when I lift a piece up, she goes crazy for it. So they do have their favorites. So there's a variety of things. I'll put a list of foods that you can feed your bearded dragon. You can pause it, write it down, and I'll put some fruits up as well. So the poisons when it comes to vegetables for bearded dragons are avocados, onions, and mushrooms. Steer clear of them. Do not feed them to your bearded dragon. Now the poisons when it comes to fruits are rhubarbs and citrus. When I say citrus, I'm referring to things like lemons, limes. So again, do not feed that to your bearded dragon. May be funny to feed to a dog when they spit it out and make the funny faces. Do not do it with your bearded dragon. It could lead to pretty dire consequences for these guys. Now also when it comes to diet of bearded dragons, babies in particular, it is crucial to make sure they have the vitamins that they need. So you can get calcium powders, a multivitamin as well. You can just sprinkle that on their food daily, sprinkle it on the bugs, and that's just going to ensure that your bearded dragon is going to get everything it needs. You can also get a gut loader for your insects. So for the feed insects you're going to feed your bearded dragon, you can actually put some of this powder into the little tub the insects come in. They'll feed on that. That packs them with nutrients, and when your bearded dragon eats that, that means they're going to get a bit of extra nutrients too. Now, a highly debated topic is humidity. Now, when it comes to the humidity of your bearded dragon enclosure, I have heard so many crazy things. So people say you must keep the humidity of your bearded dragon enclosure 20% and below. If it goes above that, your bearded dragon is going to die and keel over. This is actually incorrect. Again, bearded dragon babies are born in that hottest part of the year. In Central Australia, this is also the wet season. So they can experience and thrive and survive in humidity levels of 80 to 90%, as hot as Darwin. Gimli is up in Darwin in an outside enclosure. 6 months out of the year, the humidity is about 80+%. So she's doing just fine. The key though when it comes to humidity is having a well-ventilated enclosure. I find people run into problems when their enclosure isn't well ventilated. So how you can increase the ventilation of your enclosure, you can have a big mesh lid, so have your lid as mesh, or you can have more inbuilt ventilation panels. Now, if you really are worried about the humidity in your enclosure, and again, say if you're getting a bearded dragon that comes from I'd say a poor genetic pool of bearded dragons, so if there's a bit of inbreeding going on to get certain characteristics and they're not the healthiest and humidity may affect them more, how to reduce that humidity? Again, ventilation, make sure you got that down pat, but also having a shallow water dish, and you can also make sure you include a sand substrate, so a very dry one. And then if you are going to go bioactive, make sure that is a sand-based soil, so about 70% sand. And we have so many different species of Australian native grasses that are drought resistant. Succulent plants also don't require a lot of water. If you do kill a lot of plants, air plants are really good. They can get most of their nutrients and water from just the air, so pretty good option. Now, another big topic when it comes to bearded dragons is the substrate. Now, when it comes to babies, I generally will exercise caution with their substrate. And then when they get to over a year old, that's when I'll introduce sand as a substrate. But when they're babies, I do it slightly differently. So babies, I like to use fake grass that has a nice rubber mat. So if they jump off anything, they've got a soft landing, it's good for their joints. I'll actually have about 7 mats cut to the size of the enclosure. You can take them out daily if they poo and wee and give it a proper rinse, so it's not going to become a breeding ground for, you know, bacteria and things like that. You can rinse it off, soak them, put it in the sun, and that's pretty much going to kill everything. So I do the fake grass mainly for aesthetics, because obviously my business is about setting up bearded dragon enclosures and a variety of other reptile enclosures, and I find people want to take more care of their animals when they've got something nice to look at. It's a bit of a sad thing in today's world, but I find having something aesthetically pleasing makes you want to interact with the enclosure, with the animal a bit more regularly. But other sort of substrate types you can use as babies that aren't going to be risky are things like newspaper, paper towel. You can use soft plastic grippy tiles, and I say that for a reason. The hard tiles, if they're jumping down, that is going to be tough on their joints. In the wild, they jump off things onto sand. There is so much sand where they come from, and again, I used to live out there, sand everywhere. So again, you want something soft that is going to be nice and kind on their joints, and that will actually help you in the future. It'll make them have a happier life as they get older. So soft, grippy tiles are the best ones, not the hard, slippy tiles. It's hard for them to maneuver around. They can't grip properly when they're trying to move, and also you'll see them just slipping. They can't even stand up properly. So that's why I recommend that specific type of tile. Also easy to clean, you can just wipe it off. Now, the reason why I don't recommend sand when they're babies is because baby bearded dragons, apologies Gimli, can be a little bit stupid. So say if they've got bugs and a bug may jump out of their little feeding container and it's running along the sand, your bearded dragon is chasing it, misses about 5 times but eats a whole bunch of sand. That can lead to impaction. Now, impaction is a pretty serious health condition. It is where a blockage is caused somewhere in their digestive system and they can't pass anything. And this can be related to using risky substrates, related to feeding your bearded dragon directly on the substrate. It can also be related to temperature. If you don't have your enclosure temperatures right, it can't digest its food properly and it's going to cause a blockage. Now, impaction can pretty much be a death sentence or high vet bills, so you want to avoid that. And the ones I find the most vulnerable to impaction are babies. They're trying to figure out how to hunt, how to be a bearded dragon, how to survive. So I just take away that risk by keeping my substrate slightly different from when they're a baby to an adult. Now, say you've got an adult bearded dragon and we use Bunnings play sand. It's sanitized, clean, really good for lots of reptiles. So say you've got your sand in your enclosure and you've got your bearded dragon that's a year and over. So it should be ready for that. But how can you still decrease the risk of impaction? So various ways. With Gimli, I try to feed her always on her basking platform, or I call it a feeding platform. And doing this, just make sure her food is elevated off that substrate. There's pretty much 0 chance of her consuming that substrate. Also, if you don't have, say, a platform like this and you've just got sticks for them to climb, you can actually get a big flat rock, a big flat bit of slate, whatever you want to get, put the food bowl on that. Make sure you wipe any sand off and they can feed on there. And if anything's going to flick out, it'll generally land on the rock and they're not going to eat food off that substrate. Also, if your bearded dragon does flick food everywhere, which Gimli always flicks food everywhere, if any lands on the substrate, and especially if your bearded dragon can be a bit of a greedy guts, pick up all the bits off the substrate, put it straight in the bin. It's just going to discourage them from actually feeding off the sand, and again, reduce the chances of your bearded dragon getting impaction. Now, when it comes to the size of your enclosure, I am going to put some pictures on the screen here, and it's going to show the different sizes you can actually raise a bearded dragon in. It's going to have your minimum requirements, and you can see the measurements on the screen with the enclosure, the recommended, and then obviously what I've got Gimli in is a huge outdoor enclosure. The measurements are pretty insane, but she is potentially going to be breeding. So generally when you breed reptiles, most of the time you introduce the male into the female's enclosure, and again, she will be observed when this happens, when she finally gets a boyfriend, and this just gives them plenty of room for them to escape one another if they need to. So yeah, breeding enclosures generally are a lot bigger than your standard ones, but there's the different sizes. So lastly, we're going to finish off with some bearded dragon facts. So what makes these guys so cool? Well, first of all, let's start with their name. How do they get their name? Now with Gimli, you can see she does almost look like a dragon. These spikes she's got all along her, even underneath there, and all down the side of her body. That's where she gets the dragon name. Now, if she does get really angry, she will puff out this beard here. It will turn black, and that's where they get the name bearded dragon. So from the spikes and from them puffing out their beard. Also, them puffing out their beard, changing the color of that. So when I say beard, I'm talking about the neck and chin area. That helps them communicate with other bearded dragons. As well, they'll do the funny, cute little wave. They'll do the crazy head bobbing. You'll see all of that. So if you see any of that, your bearded dragon is not going crazy. It is not dying. It's generally probably around breeding time and it's getting a little bit excited. Those sort of actions are generally increased if these guys can see another bearded dragon. Generally, you never keep two bearded dragons together. And that's because if you keep a boy and a girl together, the boys can be over the top aggressive when it comes to breeding season. They're going to pester the females all the time. So generally, they are solitary animals. You should really only have one bearded dragon in enclosure. Now I say generally because I've seen some amazing breeders all over the world that do keep two bearded dragons, a boy and a girl, together permanently, and they do just fine. They generally have a really large outdoor enclosure though, and I find that can work okay. But if you've just got a normal tank setup, one bearded dragon, don't have two. They can fight, they can bite each other's tails off, so yeah, you just want to avoid that. So keep one bearded dragon by itself. How many species of dragons are there? Now, Google this. I'm sure you'll have fun because I could not get a right answer. There's two answers. So some people say there are 9 bearded dragons. Other people say there are just 8 species of bearded dragons, as one is not a true dragon. So I just wish we could agree on whether there's 8 or 9, and that would make videos a little bit more easier. But I'm not going to go into all the research about that. If you are interested, you can do a bit of research yourself and see what you think. Do you think there's 8 or 9 species? Now this one I found pretty interesting. It has been linked that if your bearded dragon embryo, so when it's developing in the egg, develops at warmer temperatures, it has been linked to that bearded dragon being a little bit slow. So warmer temperatures can make your baby bearded dragon a bit more stupid. So that's when it's developing in the egg. So I found that pretty interesting. They've done a bit of research into that, so that was cool to find that one out. Now, the coolest fact of them all is bearded dragons can change their sex. Now, not Gimli, she can't change her sex being an adult now, but when they're developing in the embryo, if they had male chromosomes, but if the temperatures increase and are unusually warmer, they can actually change into a female. Pretty interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned some new things. If there's anything again we did not cover, feel free to put it in the comments below. Again, hit the like button, hit subscribe. It would really help us out. We are a brand new channel. And also big thank you to Gimli. She's done absolutely amazing helping us demonstrate how to take care of a bearded dragon.